Welcome back to the Automate Show Theater, sponsored by our friends at Harmonic Drive. I'm Robert Huschka. I'm the Vice President of Education Strategies at the Association for Advancing Automation. As most of you may know by now, we're the hosts of Automate, and we're very excited to have you here with us this week. This is really one of the highlights of our week here at the Automate Show Theater. Every year, we partner with the International Federation of Robotics to give you an industry update. First, you're going to hear the trends that the IFR is seeing and see a little bit of their robot statistics from last year. And then we're going to sit down with some of the top industry leaders to have a discussion about the current state of the robotics industry, from the trends and the technologies that is driving the industry forward. But first, it is my pleasure to introduce Jane Heffner, whose title is always changing, which is why I have to write it down, who's the VP of Sales for the Americas for Teradyne Robotics. She's going to provide today's IFR update. Please welcome Jane Heffner.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Detroit. So it is my pleasure to be able to introduce to you the preliminary results with regards to installations for IFR. So a little bit about IFR to begin with. A global nonprofit organization representing over 3,000 organizations around the world. Basically robotic manufacturers, national associations, and also universities and startups. Annual global robotics turnover is about $50 billion, so we have access into many, many different areas that we can gain information from. Primary roles of the organization are the world authority on statistics, so many of you see these results come out and rely on these results going forward. It's also an advocate and a voice for the robotics industry, basically promoting worldwide why robotics and automation is necessary going forward, and also policy support as we move into different fields, helping us support the policies around the world as well. There we go. So let's talk about the status of the global market. Many of you will be familiar with this report, and the report will be actually published in September of 2025. All the numbers that we are going to present today are preliminary, but we feel pretty good that we're on the right track with them. So let's dive into the numbers immediately. So preliminary global installations in 2024 basically went down slightly in 2024. 523,000 robots installed as opposed to the previous year of 541. Basically, the data is coming together. There's a little bit more data that we still have to pull in at this point in time, but I don't think this would be unexpected to basically anybody who is here at the moment to see that this has come down. I think what is positive about this is it didn't come down too much, right? It's a very small reduction, and so basically we're still penetrating industries in very, very difficult situations around the world. As we look at how that breaks down, electronics and automotive are basically head-to-head. They change a little bit year over year, but what you will see here is +1 in the electronics and electrical segment of installations, and not unexpectedly, you see a reduction in the automotive markets. I also think that what's interesting here is you see positive increases in pretty much all of the other segments that are there, specifically metal and machinery, plastics, and food and beverage. So good indication that there is still a lot of application and penetration outside of the automotive industry, which we hope to grow. If we look at the United States specifically, again, not unexpectedly, we see the downswing continuing. What I would hope is that we're almost on par with 2021, and in 2021, 2022 had a record year. So I'm hoping that's an indication that maybe in 2025 we're seeing another record year going forward. So we can all hope and expect that that is basically moving forward. If we look at how that breaks down across the different segments, automotive in the Americas basically still remains as the dominant installation base for robotics. It is above in the Americas the previous year, which I also find interesting to see, and is a good sign that maybe we're moving forward. I think in Q4 and Q5, we saw actually record sales in both of those periods, really driving robotics forward at that point in time. In other segments, you basically see a reduction apart from food and beverage, and I think this is another area where we need to focus on for the future. If we look at Mexico, continuing to decline from their high level, they follow basically, obviously, the Americas market, a lot of automotive down there, and a very, very cyclical environment that we basically monitor very carefully. So pretty much what happens in the US, we see replicated down in Mexico as well. And in Canada, down from a record high. Significant concentration of automotive in Canada, and obviously many, many different plants tooled up last year for electric vehicles. Obviously with the EV policies changing, that has had a big impact in Canada, and we're continuing to see that progress downwards. I don't think anything unexpected from that perspective, but I think we're poised for basically growth going forward. So as I move from the numbers and start to look at the global trends and set up for our panel, there are 5 basic trends that IFR is watching very, very closely going into 2025 and monitoring very closely. First of all, physical, analytic, and generative AI. Secondly, single-purpose humanoids. Thirdly, sustainability and energy consumption, obviously being very important. New fields of business and the customer segments, looking at where we grow there and moving on from there. So diving into each one of these in a little bit more detail. From an AI perspective, 3 different levels of AI: physical, analytic, and generative. And I don't want to get into all of the details here because I want to get the panel basically up here. But analytic AI is used in a combination with vision systems and can basically help us make decisions around data. Generative AI is more of the creative AI, where we can design and we can create, based on what AI can provide to us. And then the physical AI is enabling equipment to basically make decisions based on spatial environments and data coming in from that perspective that allows the AI to make decisions of how to move forward. So very, very much on everybody's mindset right now as to how we move forward, and the panel will dig into this a little bit more. Secondly, we look at single-purpose humanoids. I think there is still, we feel that we're looking for pilot applications, a lot of buzz around the humanoid market. Obviously, you see many of them here, and I think there's going to be some very specific applications for these going forward. Safety is still a challenge. They're not working collaboratively so far, so we have to take that into consideration. I'm sure that will move in the future. But expected early applications areas we see are going to be in security and logistics and material handling. Plenty of them for you to see while you're here at the show. I think true multi-purpose humanoids are a little ways off. There's probably a bridge that we have to go through first of all, but it's certainly getting a lot of hype. Thirdly, we look at sustainability and energy consumption. Obviously, this is extremely important for customers as they increase their level of automation. Where is the energy consumption basically coming from, right? So lightweight robots, looking at how does automation maximize the energy consumption and enable people to really optimize their facilities without increasing energy costs is going to be super important. So more energy efficient robots, lightweight components with that energy saving standby is really important as well. And I think we also see reconsideration of the supply chain, where we are looking at companies relocating or locating in proximity to their end customers to reduce the amount of shipping time, to reduce the amount of time in transit, and basically the energy associated with those two. new fields of business and customer segments that we're looking at. We're beginning to see a lot of activity in construction. Many robots being applied in construction applications, specifically for those dirty, dangerous, and dull jobs that are in construction. And obviously, that faces its own set of challenges with outdoor requirements and harsh environments that we basically have to work through. Lab automation and warehousing and logistics, although maybe not a new segment, really beginning to build further and seeing more of that basically happen across the region. And finally, robots addressing labor shortages, especially, as there will continue to be a shortage of workers. We hear a lot about, robots taking jobs. We do not have the workforce to allow the growth that we need to see going forward. And so we absolutely have to use robots and use automation to replace that lack of labor that is going to be necessary going forward. So this is only something that continues to grow. It doesn't go away. And so finding those applications is going to be really important. So looking at flexible applications, we see continued growth around cobots and mobile manipulators, something near and dear to my heart, and democratization through ease of use. So we don't have complicated software that basically people have to work through. It's easy for anybody to basically pick up and use. So the outlook for 2025, we feel is very positive. We mimic what we've heard through A3, but we look at a strong ending for Q4. Obviously, there's many things that can change that, but we still feel that there is a very strong and positive outlook, especially for the end of this year. As I said before, we saw a double-digit increase of order intake in Q4 of 2024 and Q1 of 2025. So it's indicative. Since that time, obviously, some policy changes, have basically come in that have maybe slowed down that buying decision a little bit, but the interest is still there to move forward. Strong growing sectors based on order intake we see as food, and consumer goods and the chemical and pharmaceuticals. These industries are not slowing down and are continuing to build out and looking for more automation as we move forward. And obviously, the current administration target to reshore, gives us the opportunity to basically be able to bring manufacturing back here. They are going to have to take into consideration the labor shortage issue, and it gives us all a huge opportunity to basically be able to go in there and help them with their automation journey as they build out these new facilities and also upgrade their brownstone facilities. So, uncertainty, I think we all feel this in the marketplace at the moment. There is a level of uncertainty of people willing to invest. But overall, the outlook is very positive, and we see growth coming our way. So with that, I will hand back to Robert, and he will introduce the panel. Thank you.
Well, Jane, thank you again for getting us started and really kickstarting those discussions with the data we look for from the IFR every year. We've assembled, I think, a really top-notch panel to dive into these topics today. First, we have Marina Bill, the Global Head of Marketing and Sales and Product Line Digital and Software for Robots at ABB, the longest title ever. Torsten Krueger, the Chief Science Officer at Intrinsic. Julia Reimenschneider, the CEO of United Robots Group and Rethink Robotics. And finally, Matt Wicks, the VP and GM of Zebra Robotics Automation. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage. So we have a very European-focused panel, Matt, so I'll let you kick us off here.
All right,
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll just do a quick round robin of introductions here.
Sure, my name's Matt Wicks. I am the GM and VP of Zebra Robotics. I've been in the industry for a little over 30 years. You can tell by the gray hair on my face. Spent a lot of time in seeing the maturity of robotics in the logistics space and how we've evolved from, the traditional MHE conveyance and sortation and how robotics used to be just articulated arms to the advent of mobile robotics, the enhancements of machine vision, computer vision, and AI, really solving a lot of problems that we hadn't been able to see before. So it's been a fascinating journey, and looking forward to having the conversation today.
Julia?
Yeah, my name is Julia Astrid Reimenschneider. I'm the CEO of United Robotics Group and Rethink Robotics. I've been around this industry for a little bit more than 10 years now. I had the opportunity to explore different fields and technologies such as sensorics, machine vision, but robotics. Here also the industrial part and the service part. So I'm always interested in new industries, new applications, and I'm looking forward to exchange some ideas here in this panel today.
Torsten.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Torsten Krueger. I'm the Chief Science Officer of Intrinsic. Intrinsic is a sister company to Google and a daughter company to Alphabet, so we're part of the Alphabet family. I have been in robotics and AI for about a little more than 25 years, which you can also see on my gray hair. Have been around the block a couple of times, spent some time at academia at Stanford, in Karlsruhe, Germany. Started two companies. One was bootstrapped, the other one was venture funded, and have been with Intrinsic now for the past 6 years already, working on software and AI.
And Marina.
Thank you. So my name is Marina Bill. I will not do my title again since it was too long. But I'm heading the commercial operation and the software and digital for ABB. I've been in the automation business for 28 years now, but not always in robotics. I've seen a lot of different types of automation. I find it extremely interesting to see, especially areas like cybersecurity, how this is developing in robotics, how it has been in substation automation, process automation. I'm very, very interested in robotics, the go-to-market, how we can serve customers better, new business model, and I think it's so interesting to see how the robotics market, especially the last 10 years, where the market more than doubled, as we just saw, how that has been developing and what impact that has on society. So happy to be here.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate it. So we heard the IFR update from Jane Heffner, and basically a slightly down year globally. We're beginning to see, at least in North America, A3 has begun to assemble the Q1 numbers. Alex Shikani will be on this stage later today, our Vice President of Marketing, to get some of the Q1 insights. But those basically show a flat first quarter in North America in 2025. There was a significant rise in order value, about 15%, which is a little bit interesting. And Alex will dive into that a little bit later. But Jane gave us a bunch of the headlines that the IFR has seen. If you were to sort of characterize the current state of the automation industry, given the uncertainty the markets are currently living in, what would your headline be? And Matt, I'll start with you.
So I'm not a journalist, so my headlines will probably be poor. I'm an engineer by degree, but I think the main headline is the robotic industry and automation industry is still very strong and very healthy. As we look at things like reshoring and other labor challenges, as Jane pointed out in her presentation, we'll continue to see growth in this industry. That's magnified by the advancements that we see in computer vision, AI, advanced robotic form factors. We're still a very healthy industry, and we're going to be very critical in the success and growth of the economy.
Julia, what's your headline?
I would say challenges and opportunities, depending from what part of the world you look at the data. Specifically Europe, I see that there is some sort of stagnation in the market, but huge opportunities here in North America. And I'm a big fan of numbers and statistics. That's why I appreciate the report so much. And I'm getting curious about these others. I'm always looking at them and I wonder, what is that? What will we see in the future? Because automotive, that's the thing that we always worry about. It's huge and it has ups and downs. Then there is industries that we know, but what is next? And what is in there, and where can we explore, where we can actually transfer knowledge from what we know to the future?
And we will dive into that before we get off this stage, I promise. Torsten, what's your sense of where things are at?
So if I have to summarize it in one headline, I would say we cannot develop software and AI fast enough. And we're hearing that loud and clear, not only in the US, but worldwide, that there's a strong need for more and better software, more ease of use, more flexibility, And that signal is so strong that we as an industry can't move fast enough to meet the needs that we have there.
Marina?
Yeah, I mean, a headline could really be that the robots is going now from the factory floor to the factory of everyday life. Because if we look upon the figures, yes, they might go up and down a little bit, and we can see some trends in different countries, but generally the need of automation is there. And if we look upon how many new geographies and how the robot density has been going up the last year, but also the others here, so many new categories. Every year that I follow the IFR figures, there's new categories all the time. So it's clear how it's spreading into so many new segments. And what I found particularly interesting this time was that we all expected that the food and beverage market after COVID would start to really take off, and that hasn't happened. But this year, we saw some really positive figures. I think that's a very interesting part in this.
Yeah, I think the others, as Julia put it, is a really interesting space that robotics is going to play in. Before we dig into that, though, I mean, it's tough to sugarcoat the level of uncertainty the global manufacturing and supply chain is currently in. How are customers dealing with that? And I know it's a difficult question, Matt, but I'll start back on that side of the panel. What are you hearing from customers about their automation priorities given the uncertainty in the landscape?
Well, I think everybody wants a crystal ball on like what's going to happen tomorrow and the next day. So I think there's...
Can you invent that for us? The crystal ball would be great.
Right, that would be a great thing to sell, right? I think there is some trepidation a little bit about what impacts the tariffs will have. I think companies that are looking at moving forward, there's just some blocking and tackling things that all companies that are considering automation should take a look at. Things like looking at their processes, looking at what their inefficiencies are, how can they be able to leverage different technologies to improve their overall operations, their applications. Are ripe for an automation component.
Julia, what's your sense of I mean, moving towards automation always requires some degree of you're taking on new technology, you're debating the risk, you're wondering where to deploy different puzzle pieces. How much of a pause is there currently on the market? Are people waiting or are they still moving forward?
Yeah, to answer this question, I need to first say we focus on small and medium-sized manufacturing companies.
That's why you're interested in the others so much.
Exactly. But the point here is tariffs is one topic. And of course, this is like the dark cloud which is hanging above us. But I also see that there are other variables which play into the decision-making process of our customers. And these are the things we know: labor shortage, need for increase of productivity, and so on and so forth. But I recently came across a new challenge, and that is known in Europe for a long while. I haven't faced it so much in the North American market, but we have an entire generation of entrepreneurs which are about to retire and either hand over their business to the next generation or to somebody who wants to invest in that business. And how do you show a 50, 60, 80-year-old business that there is room for scaling? And this is when you start to think about automation. So I've been talking to customers, they have 50, 100 CNC machines, and they have operators feeding them. But to show that the business is scalable for the future, they are now thinking about automation. And this problem is solved for them already. So I see a lot of opportunities, and yeah, there's always something that we can complain about, but I tend to look at the positive things and the opportunities.
Torsten, it's interesting because you mentioned AI software development as a headline and how much demand there is for that. Is that one of the ways customers are looking to solve their current level of problems, either by using it to build in flexibility or create a dynamic that allows them to stay more nimble?
Let me give you two answers. One is a technical and the other one is a commercial.
Okay.
We obviously all love to talk about, at least I do, talk about technology and AI and all of the exciting things. Like we can have LLMs write code for us, the perception systems. Where now one-shot learning is starting to work. We will get to zero-shot learning. You can see some of that here on the floor. Robot grasp planning, fully driven through AI. Robot motion planning, fully driven through AI. And then also development tools that are AI-based, that don't necessarily run during the runtime, but during the development time, and therefore making it much, much more accessible to program robots. But I believe the real reason is, at the end of the day, is a business one or a commercial one. And what we are seeing in the industry, companies, they're looking for the ROI. If I make an investment today, when do I get my money back? And in many industries, as probably all of you know, the time period that people were looking at is like 1 to 2 years. I want to have my money back in 1 to 2 years, and if that's the case, I'm going to make the investment. We're now seeing more and more companies, they don't care about that anymore. If my ROI is 8 years, they still make the investment because of labor shortage. And that is a change in the industry that we have been observing recently.
You know, given what Torsten said, how is automation and robotics technology, Marina, changing to adapt to those demands for higher flexibility, quicker ROI? How are we meeting that customer need?
Yeah, I think, the customers today, much more than earlier. It started with COVID, but it's really accelerated. They want resilience and they want flexibility. And therefore also they are willing to take longer investment periods, and they think through more, how can I get a flexible solution? Not only technically, but also from a commercial point of view. So customers today, I would say, they look upon of course, the whole cost of ownership of a robot, but also what kind of services is it? How easy is it to maintain that? It's not only the first buy of it, and therefore the technology focus, yes, it should be easy, it should be quick, but what is it in the long run also that is making a big impact? And what I see is that customers, independent of size or how mature they are, they choose technology partners much more today. Somebody that they can rely upon if their knowledge level is not so high and they're new in the automation journey, who can help them to come with complete system, that the integrations are clear, the interfaces are clear, they don't have to test which gripper should I have here, where does this fit in, somebody who can really hold their hand throughout the journey. While the more mature customers today, they want to co-create. They want to see, we have this need, how can we together? We don't want to sit at home and specify something and just give to you. We want to sit together with you, maybe also university sub-supplier, and see how can we come up with a better solution. So it's a more long-term thinking, but a much more partnership way of working together that is developing the technology.
Now, one of the things Jane mentioned, especially when it comes to the North American market, is despite the uncertainty caused by the tariffs and the potential disruption, there's maybe opportunity in this, a desire to reshore, a desire to bring manufacturing back to North America. Matt, for companies that are looking to stand up operations quickly, maybe even faster than ever in different parts of the globe, be it the US or elsewhere, how do they do that? How is the technology evolving, and what are the types of questions they should be asking themselves to be ready when the starting gun fires, so to speak?
So I want to double back on one of the comments about AI first, and then we can talk about the deployment side of the equation. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think customers are really that concerned about like AI for the sake of AI. I think folks are interested in AI in terms of outcomes, like what does it do for me? What does it do for my application? What does it do for my solution? So AI is a means to an end. I always kind of cringe a little bit when I hear the term AI, because we've been using machine learning and computer vision and all these types of core kinds of technologies for a long time now, and there's this evolution.
You blame the marketing guys for that, Matt. They turned AI into one big word.
I'm haunted by the words of Melanie Wise, where she says AI is not a thing.
Yes, exactly.
But it is all about what the new software and tools that can deliver more value than we've been able to do before, enabling robots, whether it be the physical or whether it be the user interfaces, or providing information to the end user, better data or more intelligent data to be able to allow them to be more efficient in the deployment of their automation technology. And the second question was?
All right, the second question was, if we're going to rejigger the global supply chain, right? If we're going to move the puzzle pieces around, how do the customers, either from the technology standpoint, in how is technology helping them spool up a new ecosystem very, very quickly?
Yeah, I think flexibility is a key. Mobile robotics is near and dear to my heart here. The ability to understand what their current processes are, understand where their pain points are, and then be able to deploy flexible solutions that are adaptable based upon changing environments. So like when you consider a mobile robotic in a fulfillment application, very easily deployed, very quick to get a return on that investment. And then as those businesses change, you can scale up, scale down based upon those known unknowns that are coming down the pipeline.
Julia, you talked about, the mom and pop shop looking to hand off their company, right? How is that advice different for the big boys versus the smaller companies in how they spool up their technology at the speed they need to, given the uncertainties in the market?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand what is the level of education. And when we relaunched Rethink last year, I was surprised that this technology is around since 10, 15 years, and I still have people coming to the booth asking me, what is a cobot? So always be aware, what is the industry, what is your customer, actually what's their understanding and where are they coming from? So where can I start? And based on that, I think it is important that right now I see there are almost like two worlds. There is the big companies, ABB, FANUC, and all the ecosystem of established manufacturers and suppliers for the industry. And on the second half, I see a lot of startups with great technology. But if I have zero understanding and I start from scratch, should I go with a startup where they may be in their A, B series funding round and the technology is maybe not ready? And do I want to go that path with them? Do I want to contribute to the maybe next generation? Or do I want to go fast and do I choose a provider which has proven technology and an ecosystem that I can source from? And this is something where I consult, or we consult our customers to say, where are you in your automation journey? What's your automation strategy? And what is the right tool and the right partner for you?
Torsten, how's the conversation with customers changing? You mentioned, I think, 25 years in the robotics industry. Is the pace of even the change in the questions changing, right? Like, it used to be, I think you guys got the same questions for a decade, and then they changed to a 5-year cycle. And now the questions seem to be changing at a much faster clip as your customers, I think, become more intelligent with what the technology can do for them.
So what we're hearing from the customer is really, we provide a lot of AI-based solutions on the software side. And if you look at the pace of the field of AI, and Robert, we talked about that in the board meetings quite a bit, and I have always been advocating, whatever we write down, if we write a white paper today, it's going to be outdated in 6 months from now. Because the technology is moving so fast, and also the way it's getting integrated into robotics automation, this is a pace we have not seen ever before. And to give a few concrete examples, so when it comes to perception, we have been talking about AI and computer vision for robot vision for many, many years. But we're now getting to the point that literally my mom, and she's a dairy farmer, she has no idea about robotics, she can program these systems. That it's a few mouse clicks nowadays, and this is all enabled through AI. Right. We're now at the cusp of seeing the same for grasp planning. Instead of programming robots how to grasp, it's going to be a few mouse clicks in order to get there, using a lot of synthetic data to train an AI model that then just does grasp planning. We're seeing the same for robot motion planning. Instead of having fixed programs that are static and that assume a static environment, we're now getting to the point that we can use these AI models to run in dynamic environments. And so everything is computed online on the fly, and it becomes programmable in a very simple way. You don't need to be a PhD level expert anymore. And now from a customer's perspective, what that means is with all of this new technology, most customers are not even interested in keeping pace with that development. They want to use the technology and create value for their use cases.
And that's tremendously exciting, right? But the part I always wonder about there, and maybe Marina, you can jump in on this, is when then is the right time to jump in, right? If it's changing so fast and you're having these conversations with customers, how do you assure them that they're not jumping in too soon or jumping in too late and making the right decision about when is the right time to buy?
I mean, at the right time to buy, I think when it comes to automation, is a little bit like the right time to buy a house. It's never too early. You know, you will always be angry with yourself that you didn't start a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And most customers also say that I should have started. Now, starting this journey doesn't mean that you have the full scope program and you thought through everything from the beginning, but that you start to really see what is it I really need and start to educate yourself with skills which would be needed, and then run a little project first. Start small scale, experiment a little bit, because a lot of how it's used is also which processes you're using. We can always come up with a nice system, and we can do a nice pathfinding and everything like that, but how is it going to be used for this application today and tomorrow? And then scale from that, and also listens to others. Sometimes I have the feeling every customer needs to invent it yourself. I mean, look upon your some peers, not your direct competitors, but other ones, what they did, where can they start, and what can we learn from that part here? So, you know, jumping on the train as quick as possible, even if it means a very, very small step, because most projects that turns out to be successful, they were not the big bang projects. They are always the ones that took a small step and that you adapted going ahead. We talk so much about robots should be flexible, but I mean, also the way you buy a robot should be flexible, the way you implement a robot, and how you change the design of it on the shop floor, because things happening.
So let's start by talking about Julia's others. So let's maybe start with you, Julia. Jane went through a little bit of the sectors where she was excited about the potential for growth. As you look at some of the smaller players, what sectors or what types of companies do you think ripe for entry into the automation space?
So I would say, as I have a cobot background, I see that in the cobot technology area, there is change, and a lot of companies increase their portfolio, longer payload or higher payload, longer reach, performance. I saw Universal Robots launched a new UR15 with a higher speed, and that comes also along with some changes regarding safety. I guess everybody is aware that there was a revision of ISO 10218. So there are new use cases and ideas, and also robots coming out of that. But I see a lot of improvement and change, also new technologies around the AMRs. So like when I joined a vision company almost 8 years ago, people told me, oh, bin picking, this is so complicated. Today, bin picking is, you know, I don't want to say it's completely solved, but I would say 80 to 90% we have a solution for that, right? And with AMRs, 2-3 years ago, we were struggling a bit, you know, about all these undefined environments, about how do we establish fleet management. And I see a lot of things in this AMR environment. The technology is advancing, and it's going very, very fast. And around the main robots, so the cobots and the mobile robots, there's a lot periphery, a lot of in the ecosystem, vision system. I'm super excited about companies like Inbold. That's a startup from France. They have a booth here, and sorry, I'm not making advertisement for them, but I'm just fascinated by their technology of automated guided vision systems, which is a real use case. And they are working with the industries, with automotive leading companies to get the products there. So these are the technologies where I see there is a future.
Good.
No, I just think sometimes we always say large companies and small companies. I think that distinction is less important. It's more important where you are in the automation journey and what you do. Look at lab automation. The smallest companies does it to the really largest companies does it. Where do you start and how you do it? That's more important. The application part of it maybe more than the size of the company. And I must also echo that what's happening in the AMR, the unstructured environment that you can now use AMR, is a fantastic field. And also here the ecosystem, together with the robots, cobots, industrial robots, and the software, this gives completely new opportunities. But again, I don't like the small, big one. I'm more into where you are in the journey and where you want to start growing.
Interesting. Matt, she teed you up a little bit with the conversations about AMRs and what types of industries they're, forgive the pun, moving into. Where do you see that technology going, and what are the next targets for a company like Zebra for AMR, or even broader automation technology?
I mean, it goes hand in hand with this conversation we've just been having here. Is with the AMRs are a tool and a means to an end to achieve improved productivity for our operation. So we're seeing a lot of third-party logistics players that are out there that are, they're, quite frankly, their operations are very manual. You know, they're using handheld tickets and carts that they're pushing around, and to be able to take that next step in automation, that barrier has been, relatively speaking, high. Some of the technologies that are coming out are enabling a faster ROI by combining the robots with the human pickers in a very directed workflow. So like using wearable devices in concert with the mobile robotics to be able to achieve higher efficiencies than they would be able to do otherwise. So it's that human-robotic collaboration component that I see as a continual evolution. And it's even beyond just the robotics component too. Is by able to direct the workers even in the picking operation, you can also then support other functions like pack out or induction or other kinds of operations through that directed workflow.
Torsten, are there sectors that, especially the AI software space, is going to open up for automation?
So the answer is clearly yes, and I think robotics automation is clearly moving more into logistics, and we're seeing that here already, and I believe the next field is going to be assembly. I think the way it has been in the past is if you have like a force torque controlled robot with a vision system, if you give me an unlimited budget, I can pretty much automate any assembly task. But with this piece unlimited budget, obviously that doesn't work. The ROI case does not make sense. And now with AI tools, synthetic data generation, pairing that with small amounts of real world data, putting some reinforcement learning on top of it for like the last inch, the last millimeter refinement, where I believe in the next, not 3 years, rather 2 years, we will be getting to the point that it will make commercial sense to use robots and automation systems for assembly tasks. And if you look at the electronics industry, actually all of the industries that Jane was talking about, there's still many segments where you see human labor, and it's not 5 or 10 years away. This will happen in the next couple of years that we will see robots there.
And Marina, ABB has moved into some of these spaces already. Lab work being a particular one that was very human, very manual task field. What learnings are you taking from that as you look at other industries?
I mean, it's been a really interesting journey, the lab automation. And for us, it was important to team up with a partner who also had really the detailed domain knowledge. Because especially when you go into a new area, you can just assume that a lab would work like in an automotive assembly. You have to be very respectful for the application knowledge. So our knowledge, our start was there really working together and going together to customers with that kind of part. Now, one of the areas that I see coming very, very much is one of the biggest segments in the world, and maybe one of the most unautomated, and that's construction, of course. There's a huge potential in anything from bricks, walls, and there again, you need to see how it's going to be used, what is the process to adapt the right technology, because coming into such an unautomated, as a whole, industry will require something very different than going into a lab automated space that already from the beginning had very high quality assurance and so on. So you can take some learnings with you, partner with the right people, but also be humble over that there is new parts here. But I'm really interested to see what the construction business will be the next year, because the need of automation there is gigantic.
Somebody once coined the phrase, I think it was one of the leaders at 3M who said unautomatable tasks, right? That we're entering an era where, and what you're talking about, Torsten, these tasks that were so difficult that it was unthinkable that robots would take them on. We're now, and Julia, maybe you can speak to that, we're now seeing this opportunity on the horizon where more and more tasks become possible.
Yeah, and maybe start from the perspective of the hype of the humanoids, because everybody thinks, and sorry, I'm very old-fashioned.
We can talk humanoids. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
And I'm not speaking against humanoid robots here, but we have this hype, and everybody thinks these robots can do literally everything. But let's be honest here. What can they really do? And there is a way to get there, and this way can only be paved by having the grippers, having the mobile platform, no matter if it's pedestals or if it's wheels, whatever it is, but we got to work on this. And the customers ask first, does that really work? Does the grasping really work? Does the navigation work? Does the connectivity with my environment work? Can I connect it? And when we are going outside the automotive industry, when we are going into, for example, a laboratory, there are complete different players. Yes, of course we heard of Siemens, but do we know how to communicate with a Siemens analyzer or with a Heddish centrifuge? What do we as industrial know about lab automation, for example? And there are different questions, and people ask, can we really do this? And it's really about the application. And this is where I think we are on a long path to get to a humanoid, where I think we first got to make the manipulator work, we got to make the mobile work, we got to make the integration work.
Yeah, so we're going to, in just a minute or two here, we're going to turn it over to audience questions. So start thinking about those. I have questions. I could do this all day, but I'd love to hear from you guys in the audience. We've talked a little bit about the trends that are empowering this automation. What do you think, and maybe we can do this a little bit of a lightning round. What are the big technology breakthroughs right now you're either keeping an eye on or you're really excited about? It could be, low code, no code, but Matt, what gets you up in the day and think this is going to be the next best thing?
I mean, at the end of the day, it is just a continual evolution of the enhanced computing power, the integration of different software technologies and computer vision. It's the confluence of that with the electromechanical systems and understanding what problems that we're looking to solve and pulling those technologies together in order to solve those problems. Like the low code, no code kind of component is like, well, okay, we want to be able to do more advanced robotics, but we don't want to have a PhD to be able to code these things. So that was a problem that was solved with these kinds of technologies. I think the evolution of the problems that we're trying to solve with robotics will, at least in my career, the problems have always exceeded our ability to solve them in an economic sort of way. So it's almost like we're always going to be chasing that elusive goal of, in my industry, it's like the dark warehouse. I hear the dark warehouse since I felt like I was an infant. It's like, is that ever going to happen? But we've done amazing technological advances with mobile robotics, articulated arm robotics in grasping and grasp planning and motion planning and all these kinds of things. But the industry has evolved so much so that those problems have now become that much more difficult and that much more challenging. So I think we'll continue to solve some pretty amazing things as we move forward in time. But I also think that the problems that will be presented are going to continue to evolve at a faster rate than we'll be able to solve them.
Julia, what are you really excited about?
I would say it's analytical AI and safety, because on the one hand, AI is all about data. For me, it's still machine learning, and we need to gather all the information from the sensors, from the robot performance to learn and to improve the performance. And on the other hand, as I said earlier, there are new regulations regarding safety, but also when I look around the humanoids, what are the requirements there? What are the standards? And once we think of this, how we can create a safe environment, there will be new applications and new ways to also deploy faster.
Yeah, I think AI-based safety we could have a whole panel discussion just based on that particular topic. Torsten, what are you excited about?
So in my view, this is going to be all about AI. And I believe we're all using AI as a buzzword here. So I want to break this down a little bit and make it concrete. Let's first make a distinction into two categories. The first category is AI during development time, and the second category is AI during runtime. During development time, it's usually okay if I have a solution, an AI-based solution that is 80%, maybe even 70% there. Right? Like think of coding assistants, think of design assistants, segmentic augmentation of digital twins using, for example, VLMs, as Jane mentioned earlier. There's a huge potential that just accelerates and simplifies and eases the development of robotics automation solutions. This morning we heard from Schneider Electric, the industrial co-pilot to program PLCs, for example. That's another example. during runtime, we have different requirements. We are looking at levels of robustness, uptime that are close to 1 just to meet the standard in the industry. But here even, especially with synthetically trained models, we're seeing on the perception side, on graph planning, motion planning, task planning, there's so many things that will become AI-based. The way I embarrassingly think about myself, like even 10 years ago, I was not able to think we're going to solve this in my lifetime. And even 2 years ago, when just thinking of perception, I was not thinking we would be here so fast. And if you now extrapolate just a few years, not 10 years, we will solve robotics holistically, I believe, in my lifetime. And this is something that I came to believe just recently, and it's all going to be AI-enabled.
Marina?
Yeah, I will just echo my 3 other panelists. Of course, it's AI. I mean, it's really bringing the robotics industry to the next level. But I think it's already there. But what we will see so much more of is everything with integrated vision. Having AI and having now robots to be able to perceive, predict, and perform in a complete other way, because you can have really a fully integrated vision system using the AI. And we've seen many of these applications here, but I think we're just in the beginning of that. So from a technology point of view, that I will kind of point that out.
Yeah.
But I think there's another technology or human technology thing that we should watch, and that is how quick, with all the new technologies there, and we all couldn't imagine how it's happened so quickly, how will we keep our knowledge as people working with this up? How will the skills, the knowledge, and the training work like? I mean, it's great to see what's happening downstairs with the educational part, but we who are not in school anymore, how do we, and which technology will we use that we are constantly updated so we can benefit from all these new things? I think that's a question mark that is up for us as an industry also to solve.
Yeah, and I think the role AI will play in that will be fascinating.
Yes.
You know, AI as a trainer, or AI as human empowerment, right, will be something we haven't touched on yet either. And maybe we'll get into that depending on what our friends out here ask us in the audience. So if you have a question, go ahead and shoot your hand up in the air. We will bring a microphone around to you. Do not be shy. I promise I'll be nice. You're really going to make me ask all these questions. There we go. Thank you. You're my new best friend.
Hi, my name is Zach Davis from LMI Technologies. How do you guys see the relationship between robotics and 3D vision advancing as the technology continues to progress?
Torsten, you want to take that one?
Yes. So there has been an evolution that probably started around 2013, 2014, when deep learning became a thing. When suddenly with a 2D camera you were able to perceive objects, object recognition, pose estimation, things suddenly became much, much simpler. And this is something we have seen probably between 2013 and then evolving maybe all the way until the early 2020s. Now we're getting to a point that, you know, with that approach, there was training costs and training time involved. And specifically looking at the training cost, there were some use cases where it did make sense, and in others it was just still too expensive. With the more recent models that we're seeing, which are more like large-scale models, foundation models, we're now getting to the point that with one-shot models, all you need is a CAD model or a picture of an object, and training cost and training time is zero. So deploying these models becomes much, much simpler compared to what we had even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. And now we're seeing the trend towards zero-shot. Zero-shot is not yet at the level of robustness that we need in the industry. So if you, for example, do pose estimation, you see many errors, there are hallucinations. But one-shot, which again, zero cost, zero training time, you get to sub-millimeter accuracy, sub-pixel accuracy today.
Anyone else want to, is that enough, or want to grab another question? All right, let's go back to the floor. Anyone else want to, there we go. My second best friend.
Hi, Daniel Abate, National Electrical Manufacturers Association, NEMA. It's a question for any of you. I think Julia touched on it a little bit. But what's the need for interoperability amongst components and systems in general?
Yeah, you're cutting out on me a little bit, but you said you're from NEMA, right? And
Yes.
I know near and dear to your heart is interoperability standards, right? So I think I've got this down correctly. So, Julia, you had mentioned this a little bit earlier about the need for technology to be able to talk to themselves. A Siemens PLC, getting data from another device and having them play well together. You know, and maybe Marina or Torsten or even Matt. Matt, why don't we start with you? We'll give you a shot at this because we're talking about this topic with AMRs. AMR fleets that need to play well together when you have. How far are we on this? It seems like there's still a way to go in getting our automation to play nicely together. Is that what you're getting at? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple of different perspectives on the interoperability standards. I think with the standard communication protocols and whatnot that allow different technologies to be able to communicate fairly seamlessly. I think it has to do with more of trying to generalize that what information is being exchanged throughout these different systems. And I also think it depends on the application and how that robotic technology is actually being deployed. You know, if it's to use a mobile robotic use case of something that's moving from point A to point B, okay, I can see an interoperability standard being pretty appropriate and very useful. But if you've got a fully integrated solution that integrates to a WMS, does WCS layers, does a highly orchestrated solution with robotic picking, manual base picking, and orchestrates the mobile robotics within that application, that standardization may not necessarily be as applicable. So I think it's a very use case dependent and really what the expectation is of how you intend to deploy those robots.
Anyone else want to wade in?
I mean, it is of course important that we get more kind of standards and so on, but I think also that you can simulate and validate things before you are in the real project becomes even more important when maybe not everything has a standard interface and part that you have digital twins, you can simulate, you validate, and you try things out. That's also something I think I see a lot, that the need for that has gone up, which incredibly the last years, probably as one of the effects of your question here.
Anyone else have a question out here? Over there on the side wall.
Hi, thank you first of all for the panel, very informative. My name is Mitch. I'm part of a startup. We do robotic path planning and grass planning. And as I see it, a lot of how humans interact with objects has to do with sensing, so physical sensing, but it's not something that's really prevalent or that we see very much of yet in shows like this. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, why maybe it's not as prevalent, and if you think it does play an important role in eventually solving the grasping problem.
Again, we're struggling, so I'm going to try to translate this. So you're asking about sensing technologies and the role they're playing in the advancement of robot applications. Yeah. You're saying you don't think they're quite there yet to accomplish some of the tasks that we've been discussing on stage.
Yeah, specifically physical sensing, like
physical sensing. Yeah. So touching, force feedback, those types of technologies.
Right. Yeah.
Where are we there, Torsten? I'll start with you. You're the 25-year roboticist. What progress are we being made on, again, if you're going to talk about some of the tasks you're talking about, which are very difficult manual assembly tasks, the way our fingers work is so important in that.
I would consider the hand, the fingers, an actuator. If right. Okay, let me get to the sensing first, and then I can talk about hands.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily applying five-fingered hands, by the way. So, but go ahead.
But on the sensing, even here, we've seen a lot of progress on the perception side. If you look at some of the new cameras that are out there, now there will be one of the latest trends is to bring in cameras with polarized filters so that you can pick up polarized light, and that is very important to be robust in the case of transparent objects, shiny objects, made objects, in order to increase the level of robustness under all sorts of lighting conditions. In very bad conditions, like half of your image is like direct sunlight, the other half of the image is like shade. So that's on cameras. On force torque sensing, those have been around, and from my perspective, good enough since a while. They haven't really been deployed much because programming the systems have been too expensive. And like I mentioned earlier, this is where AI will come in to reduce the cost. Distance sensing, similar. Sensing technology has been there since a long time. This has not been deployed much in many use cases because programming and integrating the sensors is too expensive. But again, through AI, this will become easier and cheaper. on the manipulation side, I'm seeing, and maybe I'm the wrong person.
I'm going to regret opening up this can of worms, but go ahead.
But I'm seeing a big challenge for us here. Like if I look at my colleagues in the academic world, the people who have the most impressive applications use two-finger pinch grippers. That is just what works. And as dumb as this might sound, if you think of assembly tasks, there's a lot you can do with two-finger pinch grippers. They are cheap, robust, reliable. If we had a hand, or like, it doesn't have to be a human hand, but some even more flexible mechanism, that would be fantastic. I'm not a mechanical engineer, and I'm probably the wrong person to judge. I have not yet been able to be convinced that we have something new coming up there.
Matt, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, I think it's really dependent upon the application and use case that you're talking about. I mean, my first experience with robotic grasping had to do with an articulated robot with a vacuum gripper. And it worked great, and we deployed thousands of these things, and it was mature as it needed to be. I think that may be on the low end of the spectrum at this point today, and as we were discussing, I'm thinking, well, what if I wanted to have a robot that could coddle a baby and pour a bottle of milk and then grasp that milk so that you could feed that child? It's like, okay, you better have a lot of good sensing and understanding of how warm that milk is, and how soft that child is, and how you manipulate that human being. Like that's some pretty complex manipulation. So at the end of the day, where we are in the whole spectrum of grasp planning, manipulation, and motion control and perception, we've made great strides, and we can do some pretty amazing things. Are we at the level of the most advanced perception and reasoning systems and grasping systems that in the world that is sitting here right in front of my hands? No, we're not there for sure. But we continue to make some really good progress in being able to solve some more and more challenging type applications.
Anyone else on that?
I mean, there is a sensor for everything, and there is a tendency for over-engineering. And just to comment on what you said, we don't need this multi-purpose gripper. There are tool changers. So even if I have an application where I need to grasp something with different grippers, I can change in between the missions, right? But I think one of the last trends that Jane also addressed was the energy consumption. And we got to be aware, the more we add, the more that has an impact on the performance and the energy. And there is where I would always recommend, go back to what you said. What is the use case? What are we really trying to accomplish here? And do we need it, or is there a simpler or more efficient way to do it?
And to make sure that we don't add unnecessary complexity, because there's 1,000 things you can do, and that becomes costly, and it's hard to maintain, and an over-engineered system. It should be the right system that's flexible, but I think this over-engineering has to always be a little bit in balance to flexibility. So. Yeah.
See, some of us just want a Star Wars droid as a friend, and you guys are killing that dream for me. Let's take one more audience question out here, if somebody's got one. In the back. Last question, no pressure.
Hi, I'm Tyler Gubala. I'm from KUKA Systems, North America. You guys are very positive about AI overall, but I just wanted to zoom out and say, there's going to be winners and losers with AI. How do you guys see that affecting the overall health of the industry? Like, there's going to be some companies that are very good at adopting and utilizing AI, and other companies are going to fall by the wayside. So how does the overall health of the automation industry look when reflecting on that?
So that's interesting. And there are always winners and losers in any technology shift, right? So, but how should companies be viewing their AI strategy to make sure they're on the right side of that ledger? And Matt, you gave me the eyes, so we'll start with you.
I got to write the eyes, so
exactly.
give it to you. I think it's the same argument with regards to automation. AI is going to shift the way we do business, the way we do things, and it gets down to reskilling. Like, how fast does that reskilling required? Are companies investing in how to leverage the technology to begin with? It's coming. It's moving forward. just like automation has been coming for many, many, many years. And so we have to look at what is the workforce, how is the workforce changing, how can we educate that workforce into adapting to the ever-changing environment, to leverage the technology to be able to move different things forward at a different pace. So it's just a matter of how quickly can we adapt. I think with automation too, and even in AI, I think our ability to adapt and re-educate that workforce is also increasing at a faster pace too. So we'll leverage these tools of AI to help us reskill our own abilities to be able to do things that are more uniquely human.
Sorry, anyone else on that? Oh, Torsten's thinking about it. I can see the gears turning.
So there's another reason why I'm seeing it more positive. There are still many, if you go through an automotive factory or an electronics factory, there are many tasks where you see humans doing them today, and they're actually hurting their bodies. There are some tasks the humans can only do it for like a year or 18 months, and if they do it longer than that, then their bodies will wear out. And I believe that these are tasks no human should do, because you should not be selling your health basically to your employer, so that you might need to end up in a wheelchair if you do it for too long. And there's definitely a whole bunch of tasks that will be automatable in the years to come, that will be enabled through AI. And I feel that there's also a number of positive aspects when it comes to deploying more and more AI in our industry.
Yeah, and I mean, I will continue the positive tone, but AI, we also have to see it from all these others we said, all these new type of segments, the ones who are starting to automate, they will be so helped to start the automation with AI when they have AI-assisted coding and alike. So, I mean, it will also help to, I don't really like the term to democratize robotics and so on, but it will help to spread in more areas in itself. And I think that is a very positive. So let's see it also not only from us as industry, but really the users of it, what change this will make for a lot of users.
Yeah, I think ultimately, right, it's a tool in the toolbox. You've all said, don't say we're just going to apply AI, or we're not just going to apply robotics. What are you trying to do? And that's ultimately the right question. And the companies that win, I think, will ask those types of questions. So let's move into sort of the last lightning round here. I want to take us back to where we started. We saw the robot stats at the beginning. And Matt, we'll start with you. Marina, we'll end with you. What do you expect from this year? How do you think this year is going to go? Just from what's going to be this when we're here a year from now, having this conversation again? Will we be really excited? Will we be kind of? Will we be somewhere in the middle? What's your sense? What's the weather forecast, Matt?
Again, I don't have a crystal ball, so you can't hold me to it. But I think in general, these automation trends will continue, and we'll understand more about how to use these technologies. They'll bring new innovations that will allow us to solve other problems that we've been trying to solve, or they'll make our ability to solve problems in a more cost-effective, more efficient way than we've ever been able to do before.
Julia?
I'm very excited about the geopolitical development and what's happening here in the US, how many European companies really bring the production here, and I really keep my fingers crossed to see a lot of development and a ramp up in manufacturing in the US.
Torsten?
I believe that actually Jane's numbers said it the best, and it was very loud and clear. I believe you had on one slide, you were saying we were going to have a labor shortage of an additional 3 million people in the United States by 2030, if I remember that correctly. So let's say we do not invest more in robotics automation, we just stay where we are. We know today that there's going to be a labor shortage of 3 million people in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have another choice as a society to invest more and do more in this space.
And Marina, you get the last word.
Yeah, well, I will repeat what more or less said the other was. I mean, it will have some challenges. We see it already on a macroeconomic, but the basic drivers for automation and robotics hasn't changed. And if they change, they're going even quicker, both with the help of all the technology we can use here, but also labor shortage, sustainability, and the complexity of this world. So it will just continue to open up the world of automation for even more users.
Marina Bill, Torsten Krueger, Julia Reimenschneider, I almost mangled it, and Matt Wicks. Please join me in thanking them for their time today. And thank you all for joining us here today at the Automate Show Theater, sponsored by Harmonic Drive. We'll be back shortly with our next session, but really enjoy your day here at Automate. Thank you so much.